got some news about recycling. Of course, here in California, we're very good about efforting the recycling whole process at our home and business and so forth. Well, now there's a California Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside, and they have a report about recycling. We're going to learn more about that from the chair of this particular commission. She's also the executive director of the National Stewardship Action Council. It's Heidi Sanborn. So Heidi, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Katie.
Sure. So you've released a report. It's their first annual report, and you've got lots of recommendations. So kind of explain to us what the report's all about, what you're addressing here.
Well, the legislature asked for the commission to be set up because, as you know, our recycling system has some problems. And they were looking for a lot of stakeholders to be able to agree on solutions. And we have 17 commissioners. They include waste haulers like Recology and Waste Management, but they also include nonprofits like mine and Californians Against Waste, but also local governments like LA County and even rural Del Norte County. So a very broad stakeholder group. And we actually have 30 policy recommendations with 17-0 votes in support. And they're all very reasoned, thought out recommendations on what the state can do and what the public and the manufacturers can do to help make sure our system works a lot more cost effectively. As you know, Sacramento County just had to raise rates $10 a month. And that's because we have a very inefficient system right now, and we're trying to get to the root of solving those problems. And we've got 30 recommendations to help do that.
Well, I'd love to hear at least some of them, because I know people are still sometimes confused about what to recycle. Am I recycling the right thing? And some people maybe aren't as conscientious and just throw a bunch of stuff in there. So I know that there are some issues with the whole process.
Exactly. And that's one of our first recommendations was we need to give truth in labeling to the public. So the manufacturers are responsible to label things like, for example, not with chasing arrows that are not recyclable, because people then put them in the recycling bin, and we have to pay to sort them out. And then it's very expensive. It starts raising the price. But if people look at and see a chasing arrow, they think that's recyclable. So that's one of our first bills, is SB 343 in the legislature by Senator Ben Allen, so that the public isn't as confused. And we all know it's confusing. Even the industry's done studies that say only 4% of people are not confused in recycling.
4% are not confused, which means the remaining 96% of people are confused about how to recycle?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. It's actually more confusing to them than doing their taxes.
My goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got one thing going, and that's just really making it clear what is recyclable and what isn't, right?
Right. So that's one thing, is stop confusing the public by mislabeling and misleading them into thinking things are recyclable when they're not. The other thing is we really need them to stop putting materials in the system that contaminate it. So, for example, if you buy a water bottle that has a plastic sleeve on it, that's a contaminant. We then have to somehow get that plastic sleeve off in order to recycle the rest of the bottle, and it adds a lot of cost to the system. Or not make, the soda bottle out of green plastic. That green plastic is a contaminant to the rest of the clear stream. We're also asking the manufacturers to help us create markets, and by using higher post-consumer content, that will drive the market for these materials at end of life. And then the state really needs to also walk the talk. They need to be buying recycled content products. They need to, be buying less chemically contaminated products. For example, carpets are, often sprayed with a stain repellent that is a highly dangerous chemical that we don't want in the system. It's dangerous to everybody in the system, and that adds costs as well. So we're trying to get all these costs down and also make it a safer system. We've also asked the state help us by preventing fires. We're seeing fires at an epidemic level in our waste system. They're in the trucks, they're in the bins, they're in the landfills and the facilities, and they're shutting down facilities for months at a time, which is extremely expensive and driving insurance costs up. So this is where we need help from the state, but also the public. We need to get the public to stop throwing batteries into the trash because that's actually starting fires. So if you have, let's say, a leftover vaping product or some other electronic that has a battery in it, please don't throw it in the trash. That could start a fire. There's lithium-ion batteries in particular set very hot fires very, very quickly. And then, we have destruction of our facilities. So those are some of the big things. And then also don't throw anything that's explosive like aerosol cans or 1-pound propane gas cylinders that you might use in your camping stove, for example. People think they're empty and we'll just throw the metal in the recycling bin, but the gas often contracts in the cold. People think they're empty, but expands in the heat. And then if one of our forklifts hits it, they can explode and have exploded and caused fires at our facilities as well. There's lots of recommendations for everybody.
Wow. And I think people are hearing this for the first time. A lot of them are thinking, oh, I didn't realize this, So it's good.
Right.
It's so good to get the word out, Heidi. And I don't know if, I'm sure there's something available, must be online, either from, your nonprofit or something from the state that explains all this in detail, right?
Well, you would think so. The problem is this is the biggest part of the problem is there's so many materials in the system that it's very hard for any one entity to keep up with all the advice and all the changes. And then there's disagreement often in our recycling community on what to say, which is why this report is so important and why I'm doing this interview, because we're trying to get the word out to the public. The one thing I can say you can go to for those 1-pound propane gas cylinders, if you would like to get them refillable, there's a new refillable out, and U-Hauls are selling them up and down the state. And if you'd like to go use refillables instead of the disposables, which would then ease your problem of trying to find a home for those every time you use them, you can go refill them at the U-Haul stores, and you can go to refillyourfund.org, and that will show you a map of California and where you can buy and refill those propane tanks instead of having to dispose of them. And if you think about it, we're all used to doing that with the 5 gallons and our barbecue tanks. Why not do it with the 1-pounders?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Well, Heidi, this has been some great information. I appreciate you sharing it with us and our listeners.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I guess the advice is to just really, I don't know, just because you said there's no real clearinghouse for all this, but...
Exactly. And I think that's why I'm just trying to get the word out. If you have electronics, don't throw them in the trash. Don't throw them in the recycling bin. Bring them back to an electronics facility or your household hazardous waste facilities. If in doubt, don't throw it in the carts. Go to the hazardous waste facilities. And when you buy things, be careful. And also, please try to, refill a water bottle. Don't try to get a plastic water bottle every time. And there's a lot of resource waste because of our habits. And once we get used to refilling and bringing our own bags, we get used to it. And we save a lot of material and actually a lot of money as well.
That's so good to know. Well, Heidi, thank you for all you're doing and for sharing this information with us. Very, very informative.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great to talk with you again. Thanks so much for having me.
You too. Heidi Sanborn there. Thank you.